Welcome back to the Real Men of Real Estate on KCAA Radio. My name is Dan Redig, and I'm here with Bille Colesstock from Wheelies, and we've been talking about what they do and how they do it here in Southern California. So we want to talk a little bit now, Bille, about just what's going on, changing in the market. You know, the COVID restrictions are lifting. So what does that mean right now?
Well, I mean, we were having a heck of a time during COVID, and I think everybody was.
Absolutely.
With property management. It was tough. There was a lot of information going out there about people not making their payments. A lot of people weren't. We've been successful with helping folks getting the government assistance programs out there.
So that's part of your program then, is to help them through that process.
We'll fill out the paperwork for our clients and make sure that it's getting pushed through. We've been very successful at doing it that way. There were some people who were doing it without us and never really saw good results.
Okay.
But we just, because we have a team, and we have the ability to dedicate the time, and it's just a process. I mean, that type of stuff is just a process, and we can do that for our clients. And if you're out there and you still need it, we'd love to be hired, and we'd love to help you through that process.
If someone comes to you now because they're having a problem, can you go back and get years past money or no?
There's deadlines, and there's deadlines to that. There's cutoffs, but yes, in the immediate future, immediate past, yes.
Okay.
I don't know how long it's going back right now. The team would be more up to date on the exact dates and times. I do know that there's cutoffs, but we can definitely help you go back and get last 6 months, call it.
Oh wow, that could be a real game changer for someone.
Yeah. So there's a lot of folks right now who that's helping.
Wow.
And what's actually unique is through COVID, we were not seeing as many people who were getting the assistance programs did not come out right away.
Right.
They came out, but they weren't well yet established, and they weren't
hard to manage the process.
But now that the process is actually very easy and it's more abundant and the information is more out there, more people are actually defaulting right now than when we were in our portfolio. And when I say defaulting, though, they're contacting us and basically saying, "Hey, I need assistance," and then we go through the process and get them the assistance.
Wow.
And so it's just good communication between our owners and our tenants and making sure that we're walking that line. Though a lot of that is going to start stopping. So March 30th is when a lot of the COVID assistance stuff is ending, right? With regards to the evictions and the restrictions on owners.
Right.
So that's all coming in, and then we get to go back to level playing field again.
That's good news for a lot of property owners, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're dealing with an eviction or somebody who's not paying, you on March 30th, is provided that the government doesn't extend it again.
Right.
It's been extended in the past, so provided it's not extended again, we're going to...
Yeah. At this point, it doesn't seem like it will be, but we'll have to see what comes next.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
Hopefully. I would like it to go back to a normal playing field. Our economy is good right now. We so to speak, right? Our economy is good right now. There's jobs out there. People are working. I think people are getting back to normal, or at least just adjusting to what's going on right now. Versus when it hit, I can understand that there was things that
we didn't have any options in some cases.
Right.
People had to figure it out. That was a tough time.
Correct. So I can understand why some of those things were in place, but I do think that they need to end.
It seems like a good time with numbers coming down and everything else. So
correct.
We'll have to see how it plays out.
Right.
So that starts March 31st, so April 1st, everything starts kind of going back to the way it is.
Correct. So the way it was.
The way it was.
So back if we can remember what it was like in 2020, right?
Oh, man, it's such a long time ago.
Yeah, February 2020, right?
Yeah, the good old days.
Right.
So at this point, do you have a sense for how many properties that you manage are going to be impacted?
So, I mean, none realistic. Well, we have one who.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So okay. So this is also another thing that, and I think that a lot of the news was, and it probably was true, and I don't want to say it's not, because I'm sure they were getting their numbers somewhere. But we only had 2 properties through all of COVID who didn't pay. And then even when the assistance programs came out, we got reimbursement for those 2 properties specifically. And then now again, one of those properties is back in a default status and seeking assistance again. We'll get it again, but then by the time that we get that, then they'll be caught up. Then April 1st will come.
Right.
And then we will, I'm sure that they'll default again because that's been their pattern for the last couple of years. Though at the same time, then we can evict them.
Okay.
So
there's an option for the landlord.
Exactly.
Very soon.
And then all of the other properties that we've had in default or behind on payments in any shape or form, we've gotten assistance for. So, and those mainly are, in every portfolio you have people who are slow pay, or they pay on the 15th, or they pay on the next month, and they're just consistently a month behind.
Right.
We only have about 7 or 10 of those. So it's not very many. And so those folks, come April 1st, I don't think we're going to, the owners have the decision, but I don't think we're going to do anything.
Right.
With
They'll
them.
continue on as normal. That's what normal is for those relationships.
And there might be some property managers who are listening who had a completely different experience, but that was our experience in the market. And so that's why I say, I know the news was out there that there was a lot of defaults, and maybe that was in the Midwest, but that was not our experience. So maybe that's
fantastic.
Maybe that's a testament to our tenant placement, regulations and things that we do there. But
I have no doubt that helped a lot.
We do have a pretty strict policy on that.
Good processes all around, it sounds like.
Correct.
Right on. So there's going to be some decisions to be made potentially, but really not too much change for most of them. What's coming next in terms of the AB, was it 1424 and rent increases?
1482.
1482. Thank you.
1482 went into place in last year, and we're just now starting to see the effects of that. And really, where we're seeing the effects of that is in the just cause rules.
Okay.
So what that means
we've been talking about that for years coming. So we call it rent control in the media.
Right. The media will call it rent control. It is rent control because they're controlling how you utilize or use your property. So it is some form of rent control. AB 1482 had the 5% increase, and then plus CPI. So what that means is that you can't increase your property's rent by 5% plus CPI.
Okay.
Now, what a lot of people's confusion around that is that there are exemptions to that. Really,
okay. So like what?
Well, really, that law was going after trying to go after large landlords, so like apartment buildings or people who hold properties in LLCs or corporations.
So even a small, like a fourplex, but in a corporate structure would not impacted?
Yes, they would be.
Okay.
Though, let's say mom and pop who own 9 homes, they're fine. They can raise the rents whatever they want.
If they're held in their name, or
if they're held in their name.
Okay.
Yeah. So if Joe and Betty own a property, they can raise the rent by 15% if need be.
Right.
And that law does not affect them.
Okay. But if they had it in, West Coast Enterprises LLC, then they would be limited to 5% plus CPI.
5% plus CPI.
Okay.
Which CPI with inflation going on right now is pretty nice.
Yep. That works.
But where this affects people is when you're trying to stabilize a property. So let's say it's been in the family for a long period of time. That tenant's been in the property for the last 15 years, and you haven't raised rents.
I see.
That's when that comes into play, where people are trying to look for that large increase to try to get them to the market rate. And then that's where the just cause comes into play. The just cause, you can't just ask that person to leave because they're not paying enough.
Okay, I see.
And so you have to have a reason, and there's several reasons, but the main ones that are used is, I'm going to sell the house, I'm going to move into the house, or I'm going to remodel the house 50% or more.
Okay. Is that based on square footage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And also you have to pull the permits on that renovation.
I would expect. Absolutely. You have to prove it.
Yep. Yeah. You have to prove that you have to do it. And that's if somebody's going to push you on that. So it just is trying to prevent people from just leaving the process.
Got it. Okay. Well, that all makes good sense, actually. And so the long story short on that is, if you're properly managing your property and keeping up with rent increases, the likelihood of a significant impact of this doesn't sound too high.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't affect most people. Like you say, if you're keeping up with your rents and you have a good tenant. Now you can still. I mean, we're evicting someone right now because they're a nuisance in the property. You can still evict people because of violations. And little known fact, you could have done that all through COVID.
Really?
There's a lot of people
Okay.
who said you just can't evict people. No, there was evictions during that time
Yeah, that's certainly what I heard
for
on the
other
street.
for other things other than non-payment.
Okay.
So you couldn't. It was more difficult to evict somebody because of non-payment of rent. But if there was violations in the lease, then you could be evicting people.
Oh, all right. So at least there's some avenues for other infractions.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So then as this goes through, people are going to be able to raise limits, keep up with inflation, and effectively, landlords are going to be able to manage this.
Yeah, and most people, from our experience in raising rents, don't raise rents to that let's call it 10% every year. They generally only raise their rents 2 to 3%. As general. But what I think is really important about this is that people pay attention, because with the introduction of this rent control, right? Because it is controlling what you can do with your property, is they're going to add on to these rules, and they're going to make it tighter and tighter and tighter over time. If we don't stand up and say, like, hey, that's my property, you can't touch that.
Right. So it's really important for landlords now to be involved with their local politicians and try to influence what's going on to avoid getting this, something like New York or other places where it's been wrapped up so tight.
100
You really don't have options.
100%.
Yeah.
And the reality is that if you're taking that 2 or 3% approach, which is fine, right? And then the market jumps like it has in the last year, you're going to be behind. And if they tighten those rent control laws, then you're not going to be able to ever catch back up again.
Right. You'll be forced to sell.
You'll be forced to sell, or just take a lesser amount than what the market's bearing. Which, I mean, some landlords, we had a call the other day who that's what specifically they wanted to do.
Right. Wow. Well, that's fascinating. Hopefully this is something that can continue to be managed. So we're going to go and take a quick break here. So come back and see us in a few minutes on KCAA and Real Men of Real Estate.